Welcome everyone to Dead Talk Live, and tonight we have special guest Josh Cruddas with us. Josh, thank you for being here with us. How you doing, man?
I'm great. Better now. How are you?
I'm doing great, and we're going to talk about Raccoon City, but I want to talk about a movie that came out last year. Okay, Anything for Jackson. Okay,
Yes.
in my opinion, that was released last year, and it's one of the most overlooked films of
Mm.
2020, I think. It is such an amazing film, and you play a true psycho. I mean, you are just flat out scary in the role of Ian, I believe is your character's
Yes,
name.
indeed. Yes, indeed.
So, and you got to work with Julian Rikings, who was also a previous guest of ours. Brilliant
Yes.
actor, wonderful man. So, let's
Sure.
just talk a little bit about anything for Jackson. How did you come? First off, how did that script come your way?
I'm so glad we're starting with this. I love Anything with Jackson so much. I love the people who made it. Justin and Keith, these guys who, and I'm sure you've heard about their story, but they started, their careers. They're both supremely talented people, and they started their careers doing what a lot of us have to do in Canada, which is, doing what we can to make a living in our chosen field. And so they did these these really great holiday and kind of kids movies, and all the while in the meantime behind the scenes they're cooking up this world, this horror world, which they love so much. And so yeah, I mean, they tell the story better than I do, but they needed a horror movie and they didn't have one. They figured this out, I think, in a day. They figured out the
Wow.
general plot of Anything for Jackson, and then yeah, so they very luckily, my amazing agent Megan sent me their way, and they got me to tape for two roles, neither of which I love to tell the story because neither of which were Ian. They were two smaller roles, and I taped for both of them. My buddy Chris George, who's an amazing actor, he he has to do all my tapes with me, and we did these two very different tapes, and then sent them in, and then got word back that Justin Keith had wanted me to play the role of Ian, and yeah, it was like doing that job. That it's more than a job. It was one of those films where I think everyone kind of knew, like Julian and Sheila, who are just unbelievable actors,
Amazing.
royalty in the Canadian world, and Julian in the horror world too, as you know. Like
Hmm.
he's an icon, right? And so I'd worked with them on Polar, a Netflix movie we did a few years ago, where we just had a day together where I unfortunately had to murder him in Polar, and yeah, so we got to do this thing together, and they're so lovely, so lovely. Everybody on that movie, we're making a horrific, satanic
Reverse
film, and everybody,
exorcism.
yeah, a reverse exorcism, exactly. And everybody on the movie is just like a dream to work with everybody. So yeah, I will talk about Anything for Jackson all day because I love the people behind it so much, and I do love how I appreciate you for saying that it was a favorite of yours and overlooked. I think it's one of those movies that might kind of keep going like a sleeper style. Like
Hmm.
it's one of those movies that I think people are rediscovering it and discovering it for the first time. And yeah, I mean, I think it's way too early to throw around a word like classic, but I always tell Justin and Keith because I'm so stoked for them the way this movie has kind of catapulted
Yeah.
them. And yeah, I'm so honored to be a part of it. And who knows, it might be one of those movies we're looking back in 20 years on. I can look
And
back
for
on.
those of you that have not heard of it or have not seen it, it is available for streaming on AMC Plus. It's a must-watch recommendation. Now, your character in that is multifaceted. You
Yes,
are part of the
nicely put.
Church of Satan,
Yeah,
okay?
isn't that great,
Something,
church?
yep, something that your character takes very seriously
Yes, yes.
in all its practices and whatnot. But at the same time, you're living in your mom's basement.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Great place.
So, how, I mean, and, just your interaction, there's a little bit of psychopath, maybe more than
Yep.
just a little bit. Walking into a room where you see a kidnapped pregnant woman tied to a bed just doesn't phase you. Did you do anything special to get into the mindset of Ian?
This is a great question. Yeah, he is someone who I didn't really want to go too far into because of just the kind of the dark places where he goes. But I think there's one thing I did in the script that I think helped out, and I think I would do it again in a similar role or similar situation where I kind of looked at him as a carbonated beverage waiting to explode. And I don't want to give anything away, but there's an arc that he goes on through the film. And so I think I remember writing in my script, okay, in this scene, we've shaken up the bottle. The bottle has been shaken for like 20 years, and we've shaken that bottle right up. And every kind of scene, someone or something or somehow that bottle cap gets twisted off like slightly. So it's like, okay, now it's 10% off for the first scene. And then midway through the movie, once he starts to get a little bit excited, now we're getting the territory of 40%, the
Gotcha.
feel of
Yeah.
it. And so, yeah, that I think helped me keep sense of, because, we shoot movies out of order and all that fun stuff. And other actors are way better at doing that stuff with ease than I am. So I was like, I need a little roadmap to follow to help me not mess this up. And yeah, so I think that was super helpful. And I certainly, but and Justin is one of those directors who he's had so much experience uh, that he's so confident on set, even though this is his first kind of like his passion project. He's so confident on set, and which gave us confidence. All of those actors is so nurturing and warm. And Keith having him there all the time too, amazing. He's like
Yeah.
your cheerleader in the corner. It's fantastic.
And all of you guys in that movie, yourself, Julian, Sheila, you all did such an amazing job at playing your roles. But I mean, Julian and Sheila, I mean, talk about two pros.
Oh my god.
Just the way the movie starts off, retired couple, he's complaining about the hem on his pants being a little bit uneven. And then the
Yeah.
next thing you know, they bring in this kidnapped pregnant girl, and you're like, "What
Oh
the
yeah.
hell is going on?"
What is
Of
this?
course, it's their acting and it's wonderful. Uh, but when you read this script and you read how this thing starts, did you fall in love with it right away?
Oh my God, immediately. Yeah, immediately. Like it's one of those scripts where I couldn't believe I got to play this kind of like this character with this kind of arc and this kind of juice. And yeah, Keith just has a knack for writing uh, brilliant stuff. Like his story structure work is fantastic, but also his character work is fantastic. And then he sprinkles in amazing lines here and there too. Or like as you've seen the movie, like
Yeah.
there's these lines you're like, oh man, like that's a line from a movie. Oh wait, it's not. It's from this movie, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's a cool kind of thing. But yeah, immediately. And Julian and Sheila and Constantina, um, everybody in this movie were just like perfectly cast. But working with Julian and Sheila was just like, you know, yeah, they are such professionals, but they're also they're so at ease in these, as you say, insane situations where they're and in my opinion, only they could have played these roles where
Hmm.
you're like, oh, I love these people. They're perfect looking in the part, like they look the part perfectly, but they're also like their performances somehow and it's a very special thing for an actor to be able to do that is for them to do all these horrific things and you still are rooting for them in the movie. You're like sympathizing with what they're going through, even though they're doing this insane stuff. Whereas Ian, no one really sympathizes with him, but I try to add a bit of humor too, so like you catch yourself like chuckling
Of course
at
I
some of the
can.
stuff he's saying.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that line. Of course I can.
Cutting Julian off. Yeah, those are the days where you're like, okay, I think I'm just gonna like, it's a long shot, it's a one shot. There's this particular scene where, yeah, it's one long shot, and I just was a bit. Part of me was like nervous about forgetting the lines, but I think I also was just like, we ended the day shooting that scene, so I had been hanging out for like 8 hours, and so I just was ready to ready to do it. So it's like I think Ian as well, he's in that zone. So yeah, no, Julie and Sheila, they're just so professional and yet so good at being villains of the story and also heroes at the same time.
Now, just one last question on Jackson before we move
Yeah.
on. Do you, in your opinion, and this is your personal opinion, but do you think Sheila and Julian's characters in the end gained a little bit of redemption, not in anything they did, but in their, oh shit, we screwed up.
In their downfall. Yeah, um, yeah. I think they did. If you're talking about redemption, as in
They realized they
they got,
screwed up.
yeah, they got, what was coming to them in a way. I think they did. Yeah, I think there's this kind of like, uh, uh, I think the movie, it couldn't have been any way. I don't think they could have survived
No.
for the movie to be successful, right? I think you had to kill them, or you had, they had to. Spoiler alert! Anyone watching the movie, but you had to, you had to have that
Yeah.
happen at the end, right? Like, and I think they did smartly do it where you still, even though this happens to them, you still sympathize with their plight, which is a marvelous thing to have two actors to be able to do all that, and then still at the end getting their justice, and yet you're still like, ah, it's too bad,
Yeah,
because
you
they're so
kind of feel
likable,
bad
right?
for them in a way.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about now the new movie of yours just came out November 21st. It's in theaters, Resident Evil, a very famous franchise. This one's called
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Raccoon City.
Mm-hmm.
The reactions, which I don't really pay attention to, have been mixed. Fan
Yeah.
reactions have been really, really good.
Yes.
What was it like, first off, to come into this franchise?
Oh man, it was such a thrill. Like anytime you get to go into a world that people love, to me, you got to treat that with the most respect and the most like excitement, and that's exactly what I felt. I was, because I'm a big fan of a lot of things too, and I honestly was a fan of Resident Evil too before I did it. I would always say I was way too scared to play it when I was young, like everyone else. Everyone else, Avin Druggy who plays Leon, he like grew up playing the games, and so for him, he was like, "Yeah, let's do this." I was too scared; I couldn't do it. But yeah, whenever you're going into a franchise where people love it and have strong feelings about it, because I have strong feelings, like it's the same as if I went into like Star Trek or Harry Potter, like something like that that I grew up on. Um, yeah, you'd want to really hope that the people involved are treating it with care, and so I certainly tried to, and which is amazing to see that everybody on that set, from the production team to the actors to the crew on the ground, everyone was treating this with just the same amount of care, and I think it shows when you hear the fans' reactions. They're
Oh
like, "Oh
yeah,
right, like there's stuff in this movie that I've been waiting my whole life to see in the big screen." So that's really cool.
and this is a long running franchise. I mean, we're going back to, I believe, the early 2000s when Mila Jovovich
Yes.
did the first movie. Great movie, and it's just been going and going and going. Sean Roberts, who was a part of the franchise, has also been
Hmm.
our guest.
Cool.
In Raccoon City, you play the character of Ben. For viewers that are unfamiliar with Resident Evil, how would you describe your character in Raccoon City?
I'd say he's uh, an investigative journalist. Emphasis on the investigative. He has some ideas, some concerning ideas about what he thinks is going on in Raccoon City, and he's kind of been stonewalled at every turn. And he's trying to get through to somebody, and he eventually gets through to the heroine of the movie, the heroine who's played by Claire Redfield. And so he tries to get to her and reach to her, basically to the importance of the situation that he believes is happening to all the people who live in this bored small town. And yeah, he's described as a bit conspiratorial, and he's also described as a bit crazy in the movie too, which I think is accurate in somehow in how he's portrayed. But at the end of the day, he does care a lot, just like everybody making the film cared. He cares about the people in Raccoon City and about the town itself, and about the fact that I think he really hates the fact that this giant, corporation's getting, covering this up, and the government's helping, and he's just mad about it, right? And so
Yeah.
he's really bitter, and that was fun to play for sure.
Now, when you auditioned, was the Ben the role that you were auditioning for? Did you? Okay, so you knew you got
Yeah,
your audition for one part and you got it. How vigorous was the auditioning process?
that's a great question. It depends for these movies, because these giant movies sometimes you're like, okay, like is it a eight callback situation? But this one was mercifully for me quite simple. I very luckily I'd worked with a couple of producers before, Jeremy Wilton, Hartley Gorenstein, who worked on Polar with me again, and so I knew were familiar, and the casting director I love so much, Sarah, who also is familiar with my work, and so I think that maybe helped. But yeah, I sent in a tape. I was at home in Nova Scotia, and my parents. I think I was staying in my parents' basement, literally like Ian for that week because I was doing a little vacation, and yeah, did it in the basement, and with my friend. I think again, Chris helped me out with this, and then that was it. They sent me the sides, and they sent me the breakdown of this like kind of supporting character. At the time, that they were looking for like a Brian Denny type. I was
Uh-huh.
like, I don't think I'm I don't think I'm Brian Denny, but I'll bring a different flavor to it. And then yeah, that was it. I was super lucky to just book it from that, and yeah, we were able to translate some of the stuff from the audition right into the film, so it was a lot of fun.
Now, would you say it was just more of the character and what you can do with the character of Ben, or would you have been happy with any part to get into the Resident Evil franchise?
Oh my God, I would have played a hot dog bun lying on the floor in Resident Evil. I haven't done anything, a tree, I don't care. Yeah, I was obviously super stoked to play Ben because once you know kind of dive into the stories and the games and the remake that they had, and so it's really fun to kind of be in that zone and play with a character as fun as him because he is he's a sympathetic character. You can make him sympathetic, right? His motives for the most part are really pure and really really sympathetic. And so playing with that, and as you know, I play a lot of horrible people in most stuff that I do. So it's nice to be nice to play someone with half a heart at least.
Yeah.
That was really nice.
Now, Ben is a part of the games. Did you
Yeah.
feel any added pressure as you would be the first person reprising this role from the
Oh
games
yeah.
onto the big screen?
Yeah, I think I would have had to be crazy to not feel a little a little bit of pressure or extremely arrogant. I haven't got there yet. I'm super. Yeah, there was a definite kind of wanting to be respectful and it's the same analogy. If I grew up with playing a game and seeing someone in a game that I really loved, and then the person playing that part just didn't seem to take it seriously or
Mm-hmm.
whatever or do the proper research and all that stuff, then yeah, I'd be sad about it. So certainly it made me made me make sure I was crossing all my T's and dotting the I's. That's for sure about his research and stuff. But it's a lot of definitely pressure, but also a lot of excitement. Because as someone who loves video games, I was very excited to be in a video game world. It was like a dream come true for little 10-year-old John. That's for sure.
I mean, your situation, it's kind of unique in a way. I mean, a lot of actors when they book roles, they have either it's from a book or it's a reboot or it's a brand new character in a screenplay. You are bringing to life uh, a character from a video game. So I mean, you said you knew of the character, you knew of the game. Did you do any other kind of diving or research to try to get a feel on how he was presented in the game, and maybe carry that with your own unique aspects to the movie?
Yeah, that was super important. Just like uh, playing the game, obviously playing the remake and the original, and then kind of also going into YouTube and seeing other people's kind of perspectives on what was happening in the major scene in the game that he's part of, and then yeah, just also researching as much as I possibly could about Raccoon City, like the world in which Raccoon City operates and how that city was in different interpretations of it. So I kind of try to cover my bases and the world of Resident Evil itself because I again I didn't play it as much as a kid, so I really wanted to make sure that I yeah dive fully into that world. And it's so amazing. Like video games often are, where they're so well thought out because you have to like have possible you know every possible path be a path that a player could take, right? So the fact that that exists means that there's so many possibilities and so much 360 kind of a world building going on. And so I was, yeah, super excited to dive into to the world of Resident Evil and just get immersed. And it's terrifying. Like it's at the end of the day, it's just so scary.
It
And
is.
I'm not a, which is ironic. I do all these horror movies and I still get scared by everything in every horror movie. I'm so desensitized. And so like that was the big takeaway. You're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna make a scary movie, and we did. Like, or not we. I can't really take credit at all for everyone
Oh,
else's
you
work.
can,
But
you
yeah,
can.
they really did.
Now, how does it make you feel that this film is being hailed as the one in the franchise that is most faithful to the game? And fans love that.
Well, that's fantastic news. There's music to our ears, I think for sure. That was what we were trying to do, and that's what Johannes was definitely trying to do. That was what the goal was of the movie, was to make a game finally that was, that people could kind of players of the game could watch and be like, oh, like there's something I noticed, and like just basically have a smile on your face the whole time. And so the fact that people are saying that is just fantastic, and I'm honored and excited that they feel that way.
Now, this, like I said, this film is being praised as being very faithful to the game itself. Um, was there always a sense of confidence with you, your castmates, the crew, when you guys got done and you wrapped filming this movie, that you know what, we did it right, this is going to be good, it's going to be received well? Or was there some trepidation, some anxiety, fear on how it would be received?
I think whenever you're in a big franchise like this, there's always going to be a bit of nerves about, what people are going to think and if we did what we wanted to do. But I can only speak for myself, but I know that Johannes and certainly the other actors I worked with, Alvin and Kaya, especially in Donal and Morena, like we all knew kind of the stakes that we were playing in. That's for sure. But I think certainly for myself, I wish I was there for the wrap because it was COVID times. I was shooting another movie in another town at the same time, so it was a bit all over the place in terms of location. But I definitely felt when I left my work on Resident Evil, I was like, I think this is going to be really cool. I think people who love these games are going to love this movie just because walking into the sets, uh, they've created these sets so much like the sets in the games, and so much so that I think Johannes has been saying this in another interview, but he got the blueprints from Capcom to kind of recreate
Wow.
these places as best as they possibly could, right? So when you do that, there's a beautiful shot in the movie of the Spencer Mansion, and they linger on that shot because they know that it's so cool seeing like this building for the first time in real life.
Yeah.
Here's like an actual staircase, actual chandeliers, and then actual actors playing these characters on this set. And so I think that was sort of a moment where I was like, oh, I hope Johannes is really proud of that because that's exactly what he set out to do. And I think people, like you can hear in the theater, people I got to see it last week, and people were like, you can see the smiles break out on people's faces, right, when you've got a moment like that. So I hope they're super proud of it because I sure am. That's for sure.
And do you think it was important for fans? This film, as opposed to some of the prior recent ones, leans more into the horror as
Mm.
opposed to the all action
Mhm.
side of things. Do you think that was if you were to guess, do you think that's a big part of the film's success so far?
I think so, yeah, because again, just going back to the games and my own fear, like it's just they're terrifying, right? So going and making a movie that's not terrifying, I think would have been a disservice, I think, to the games. And so I think they really made sure that I've seen the movie twice now. Sony sent me a screener, and I was watching it in my own house, and I've read the script I don't know how many times, and I'm there behind like a pillow, like not able to look at the screen because it's so scary. So you've got these you know, moments in the movies that kind of mirror moments in the games, and also just the general vibe. The general aesthetic is pure zombie terror, and I think that's kind of what happens a lot in the games. Again, I think it's even worse playing. I don't know. You probably play video games too, but when you're in control of like your view and you just and like a zombie comes out of your left shoulder, something like that, it's so scary. And so they really were able to. There's a couple sequences in this movie where they were really able to capture that sense of chaos and terror rolled up into one and given to you on a nice plate. And it's real scary, that's for sure.
Now, the film's director, Johannes, am I pronouncing that correct?
Yes, I think, yeah, you
Uh,
have to got it.
uh, has said it was very important that they wanted to set a very dark tone for
Hmm.
this film. Now, as you being in front of that camera, give us some examples of what the director did to achieve the overall dark feeling of this movie.
Yeah, I think the main thing was they took the light switch and just turned it down. It's really dark. Every set you walk in, you're like, where's my hand? So yeah, that was the biggest thing. But certainly, like, there's just an aesthetic. I think like one of my favorite things on one of the sets I was on, where they had a light that was like, the light that's like about to go out, like
Mm-hmm.
a one that's flickering,
Flickering.
and it's real hard. Like on a movie set you can't just put a light that's about to bust in the thing. You got to actually have a guy or any someone, or possibly there might be actual lights that do that now. And it's not my area of expertise, but just little things like that, right? Like making things a little bit off and making things a little bit spooky any way they could, and then all of that added up, plus the soundtrack by Mark Corbin, who's an amazing Canadian composer, and just made it so scary. And that combined with the soundtrack, the atmosphere, yeah, it's real dark. And I think too the fact that they weren't shying away from some of the, it's an R-rated movie too, right? So there's some blood and some bad words and all that kind of stuff. And so I think combining all that stuff together makes it more of a mature affair for sure.
Absolutely. Now, you have done your fair share of horror and have worked with many different directors. Watching these directors work on these great horror movies, uh, everybody has their own unique style. Do you pick up on like one director is really? I've heard directors say they're focused on colors, others are on sound, and
Mm.
there is no right or wrong way to do it. It's
No.
just everybody's different vision, and if it when they do it, it ends up working. Do you gain an appreciation for watching all these different directors work and all the different elements that they bring into making a horror movie in specific?
That's an amazing question. Yeah, I try to. I guess short answer. Johannes is was another one of those directors who just he made it fun. Like he was obviously carrying some weight on his shoulders about doing this movie with this big franchise, but he he was at ease and he was clearly so, but he also clearly cared so much about the story and about the characters and about the world he was creating, and at the same time was funny and entertaining and just made us all want to be there and want to give our best work too. So I love him for that. But yeah, it's fascinating to see different styles and how, as you say, they usually all work. Like it's one of those things where even if a director has a certain style, we're like, okay, I'm a very cinematography focused director, which I've worked with some of those directors as well, um, and they'll make a great movie, and then you have an actor's director who's more kind of like on the playing around like as if we're on a stage in a theater, and then that movie works too. So it's amazing for me to see how all of these teams come together to create the vision from the director or the producers, whatever, and how it somehow usually all comes together, even with the different focuses happening. And so I don't know if there's any way that I prefer. If I decided to direct one day, I don't know what I would do. I think I would probably just run away and cry in a corner for 10 hours. It seems like so much pressure to me, but they they somehow do it, so it gives me hope.
Now, Raccoon City does it really nice on in certain scenes where it doesn't serve up the story on a silver platter. It really lets the audience sort of try to put their own interpretation into the film, sort of making it viewer interactive. Do you like that way of storytelling?
I do. It's complicated for me. I also, one of my other jobs is I write music for films, and
Yeah.
so I have a bit of it's a perspective that I wouldn't, I think, have otherwise had if I was just acting. And so I find it difficult personally, really hard as a composer to not serve the story on a silver platter. I'm learning how to not do that and how to kind of let the movie, you know, do what it needs to do, and the music can kind of not give, not, again, not manipulate and all that kind of stuff. So I'm learning about how to do that. Um, but I can't say like, because I'm also one of those people who loves to be emotionally manipulated in a film. I love it.
Hmm.
When you're watching a movie and they're like trying to make you cry, I'm like, sign me up. Here are the tears. They're coming. Fast and Furious. So it's one of those things where I don't mind being emotionally manipulated, which might be, something I should look at in my own, go to therapy or something like that. But for now, I think it's as someone on the other side of that, when you're making a film, I think it is important to let the audience kind of figure things out on their own. I think it really is important, and I'm unfortunately extremely dumb, which is I think why I like people to like tell me exactly what's going on. But I do love those movies where you get to talk for like 20 minutes afterwards because you're so you know everyone has a different opinion on what's
Exactly.
happening. So I love those kind of movies too. So I don't know. I'm kind of not giving you a good answer because I'm in both worlds. I
No,
love
no, it
the
makes perfect sense.
yeah.
And you are a composer. I'm glad you brought that up. I haven't had the privilege to talk to that many composers. So let's talk a little bit about composing a score for a film. Now, as a composer, how does it usually work? Do you get to see the product with no music and then you're inspired to create? Or are you asked, uh, just given verbal description and then asked to create? How does it work, and which process works better for you?
Great question. Yeah. It depends on the film, depends on the team. I've worked in certain films where they will give me kind of the blank slate, where they're like, "Here's the movie without any music." Sometimes they will give a couple of verbal cues, like, "This is kind of what I'd like to have here. This is kind of what I'd like to have there." And then sometimes I'm given a movie which has been completely temp scored, meaning they'll put music cues from usually extremely famous, incredible movies to the soundtrack, and they're like, "Just do this," and you're like, "Okay, well, this is Hans Zimmer's The Dark Knight Rises," for
Yeah.
which he's so it's like it's tough to like, or they'll put in something from John Williams where he won like 5 Oscars for, it, and you're like, "Okay, so this is no pressure here," so that's always fun where you're trying to trying to basically somehow come close to these legendary giants of composing. But I do find it helpful too because then at least you get a ballpark of, okay, what's the vibe, what do they want to see here, so I'm not wasting my time, I'm wasting their time. I can, if they want a cue that sounds in the vein of the Dark Knight,
Hmm.
then I'm like, okay, I know what that is, I know what world that is, I know how to operate in that world. And then you kind of
And
you
Hans
know
Zimmer, I mean, oh my God, I mean,
Oh, he's so iconic and he's so influential too. If you ask any composer right now, like how many times they've had to get a temp score with something of his, whether it's Gladiator or Dark Knight's a big one. Like it's happened so many times where they're like
Interstellar, I mean, it goes on and
Interstellar,
on, yeah.
yes. Or Time from Inception. There's
Hmm.
a cue called Time at the very end of Inception, and that is a it's shocking how good that cue is at what it does, and it's shocking also how good it is where directors will drop it into their edits and they'll edit the movie to this
Yeah.
cue, Sound of Music, because it's such a perfectly, um, it's so perfect in how it resolves and how it builds, and so getting to kind of play in that world is fun, and it's always like, okay, I've got to do my own thing obviously, but it's nice to know that this is where they want the emotional arc of the scene to go, or this is what the action hits should be. And so I do find it helpful for sure. So I think, yeah, if I had to pick, I even though temp scores sometimes drive me nuts, I never mind having them. That's for sure. I never mind having them.
Now, Raccoon City, the score was done by, let's see, Mark Crovin.
Yeah,
Was there any part of you hoping to help out with the score of Raccoon City, or
that's a good question. I don't even know, like there was, I have done actually for Polar. I ended up talking to Jonas Ackerlund, who directed that movie, and because they were looking for a Canadian composer at the time, and I was like, hey man, like I just finished, I was wrapping another film for Lionsgate at the time, a composing job, and I was like, can I send you a demo what I would do? And he loved it, which is so kind. But he was also like, we've got someone, which is great, and they found Dead Mouse, and he absolutely killed it. just unreal, like dead mouse scoring a movie. I would fire myself to make that happen. But Resident Evil, didn't really cross my mind. I assumed they had someone for it. And then yeah, Mark Corvin, who is a Canadian composer and is just a honestly a master of horror. Like he did The Witch, he did The Lighthouse, and he's just so good at creating tension and atmosphere. And in this movie, he gets to do some melodic stuff too, which as a composer, to me, it's always your dream to do melodies and stuff. So yeah, he absolutely killed it. I'm so happy.
Now, we should tell our audience that when the credits start rolling in Welcome to Raccoon City, don't get up. There is a post-credit scene. Um, that is a trend that really became popular with the Marvel movies,
Yes.
Iron Man and whatnot. Uh, do you like that aspect as a fan of films? Like, oh, I got to sit through these credits that some run 12 minutes just to watch this post credit scene. What are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I'm I'm someone my one of my best friends, Andrew Call. He's a filmmaker as well, and he instilled from a very young age. We would go see movies together, all of us as friends, and he would always sit through the credits, and all of us would be like, "What are we doing?" And then once I started getting into the industry, I was like, "Oh yeah, I do actually want to sit through all these credits because you've got every person in this role contributed a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of work, and sometimes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make this happen. So once you start to shift your mindset and you're thinking like, okay, like I do want to honor and just give respect to the people who made this movie. Then it's kind of like a nice bonus treat that at the end
It
you get a
is.
little reward for doing that. Here's a cool, scene, right? And so yeah, the Marvel movie certainly helps with that. And I think from a filmmaking standpoint, it's smart because it gets people to stick around and watch the credits and give their respect to the people working on the movie. But also, the it gives that just a kind of extra jolt of excitement for what could be coming and gets them talking about the movie, in a more active way after it's done. So I think it's super clever. Whoever thought of that, hopefully got a raise.
Now, are you excited at the prospect of a follow up movie to Raccoon City?
Oh yeah, I hope they get to do it. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away. I don't know how I would come back for it, but who knows? There's always a way.
There's
These kind
always
of
a
movies,
way. You
always a way.
never
But yeah,
know.
I hope they do. It'd be
Uh,
amazing.
let's talk a little bit about Polar. You've mentioned it throughout this interview. It stars Mads Mikkelsen, another amazing actor. I mean, those people who have watched Silence of the Lambs and seen Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, you're like, there's nobody else who can play Hannibal Lecter. And here steps in Mads
Billy
as
does it.
Hannibal on TV, and he just knocks it out of the park. What was your
Oh,
experience working with Mads as an actor?
Metz is a just he's so down to earth and he's so chill, which I think was a bit of a surprise to me. He's just, which at the end of the day, a lot of these, incredible actors are. They're just like super down to earth, and so he was. The first time we ever met, we were both watching. They set up this old TV in one of the sets, and they had the Olympics or something. I think we were shooting it around the time. I can't remember, but it was around. Yeah, it was some skiing competition. We were just watching skiing, and he's just there in arms are like away from the scene he's about to go into and murder a bunch of people. We're just watching skiing. We're talking about the team. So he's so down to earth. But I always say there's a scene in the movie that if people see it, it's near the end where him and Catherine Winnick are across this giant warehouse style set, and they're so far away from each other. And it's that beautiful movie magic moment that I love to talk about, where it's just, in real life, these people have to be shouting to be heard over each other. Like it's like 500 feet away
Uh
from
huh.
each other, very very far. No, 500 feet. I'm not American. I shouldn't say. I don't actually know how far that is, but it's a far away a distance, and they should be yelling, but they are whispering to each other. They're whispering and they're having a conversation. And in real life, you're like, what the? Like, they can't even hear each other. Like, what's going on? And then you watch it back, and you've got these two incredible actors. Mance is just like, he's doing a cigarette thing, and he's barely above a whisper. And somehow, in the context of the movie, it works. Like it's just because it's so stylized, it's so everything's so well done, and it's yeah. So those moments you're like, oh man, I'm working with a real pro here, someone who is just an absolute icon. And so yeah, he's fantastic. It's so nice too.
Now, in all the projects that you have done, is there a particular genre? Is it horror? I mean, do you particularly enjoy doing horror over other genres? I mean, it's
Such a good
totally your
question.
personal
I should
preference.
say yes because I'm on a horror podcast and all my friends make horror movies. I should say yes. The only reason why I wouldn't say horror is because literally just the amount of blood that I usually get covered in, which is all, you know, corn syrup, dried corn syrup, and so
It's
it
hard to
gets in
get
my
off.
hair. I barely have any hair left, but the hair I do have left gets sticky with corn syrup, and so that stuff I'm like, oh, I could do. I love the genre. I could do without being doused in blood. I did a movie called Faking a Murderer where I just ended the whole movie just head to toe in blood and polar all the time. So certainly, if it wasn't for that, I'd say horror. But I don't know. I think I love comedy. Honestly, that's it's hard to be. I find it hard sometimes. I get anxious trying to be funny, or used to when I started doing comedy. But now, I've kind of since I've gotten old, I am a little less anxious. So that's kind of fun. I love comedy. But yeah, I did a movie called Moonfall as well in this year, which was action, a big kind of disaster action movie, and that was really fun too. So
Yeah.
I'm giving a horrible answer by saying basically I'll do anything if someone pays me a hot dog bun optional. But I'm very yeah, I'm down for anything, that's for sure. But I do love working with passionate people, and I find a lot of passionate people in the horror genre for sure.
Oh yeah, it has the most devoted, fans in the world.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you got to say the fans are loyal and
Oh
devoted.
yeah.
Uh, if you were to pick one project that people most recognize you, let's say when you're walking down the street, what would it be?
Um, it's only happened a few times. Thankfully, I'm very not famous, so it doesn't it doesn't happen too much. But I I'd say probably a mix of. I mean, honestly, the great thing I shouldn't say great thing, but like I'm in a mask pretty much every time I'm like out and about now, or out at a grocery store or whatever. So it's people don't really recognize me, or they haven't from Resident Evil yet. It's only been open a few days, but yeah, I've been recognized for both Anything for Jackson and for Polar. And both are always such a crazy surprise if I'm in like the pharmacy and someone's like, "Hey, like I love doing Anything for Jackson." And that time I actually had a mask on too, and they still recognized me, which was
Wow.
incredible. And I was so like thrilled by that, and just not for me, but just the people who were watching Anything for Jackson and that they got to see this movie because I was so proud of it. So yeah, I'd say probably a tie between Polar and Anything for Jackson. First time I ever got recognized for Polar, I was so shocked. It was in LA actually, and I asked the guy who recognized me for a picture because I was like, "This doesn't happen very often. Do you want to take a picture?" He was like, "What the hell?" Okay, he was very kind, but it was a bit of a unique move, I think.
Now, anything for Jackson, I don't even know the answer to this. Did it go straight to video on demand or did it have a theatrical release?
So we did it did a festival circuit, the festivals at COVID at the time, but yeah, we it got into so many festivals across the world, which is amazing. And then it went to they had a pre-sale done with Super Channel in Canada, which is a TV on demand service. So before the movie came out, that was where it was going to go in Canada. But they did some Fantasia, they did a bunch of amazing festivals, and then Shudder picked up the rights. So Shudder now is on it, and that's how you can watch it in the States, I think. But then in certain territories across the pond, I think in Russia and some territories there, it was in theaters. So that was a real thrill
Okay,
for
cool, cool.
Justin and Keith were like, "Oh man, we should take a trip to Russia," and I was like, "Well, it's a long flight to see a
To
movie
see
that
a movie.
you've seen 80 times in your own house." But it was super cool to have to have it in the big screen.
Josh, I want to thank you so much. Again, guys, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is available in theaters across the nation. Is it a worldwide release?
Sure is. I feel like it's open. I think it's opening in the UK and stuff early December, but
Early December.
it's otherwise all over the place. Yeah.
Check it out. It does lean more into the horror than some of the prior Resident Evil movies. Josh was
It
amazing
does.
in it. Also, I'm going to say it again. Watch anything for Jackson. It's available on AMC Plus, which is the company that owns Shutter anyway, so it's the same thing. Watch
Amazing.
it. It's an amazing movie. Uh, I mean,
Thank you.
there's no other word to describe it. It really is a fantastic film. Josh, thank you so much for being our guest. Any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
Just thank you so much. And I'm going to pass along all those kind words to Justin and Keith too. They'll be
Please
thrilled
do.
to hear. Yeah, thank you so much. My the thing that's been scaring me the most besides Resident Evil lately is I've got an album that just released 2 weeks ago,
Tell us
which
about
was,
it.
speaking of terror, was very terrifying for me to put out, and so that's been on my mind too. It's been a crazy, crazy time, and I'm so grateful for all of it. And yeah,
What's the name of
I'd
the
say
album?
it's called Variety Show, and it's very true to its name. Lots of different kind of genre hopping, but I yeah just wanted to make some catchy
Awesome.
songs, and so yeah, that's
So is it
been
available like on iTunes, Spotify?
yes, yeah. All anywhere you find music on the interwebs, it'll be there.
Check
Yeah,
it out.
it'll be there.
Check it out,
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Oh,
been
it's been
so
my
fun to just chat.
pleasure. It's been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing the
Thank you.
stories about Resident Evil, anything for Jackson, Polar. You've had a great career and you have plenty of great stuff to bring us on the screen yet to come. So, thank you so
Fingers
much. Thank
crossed.
you to our audience tonight. Stay safe on behalf of Josh and myself. Good night. Stay safe and stay walking. Bye, everybody.